Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into an enchanting fantasy drama called The Elf Prince is My Baby Daddy. This story is packed with romance, magic, royal secrets, unexpected twists, and emotional moments that will keep you hooked from beginning to end. It follows the incredible journey of Lyra, a kind-hearted half-elf whose ordinary life changes forever after one unforgettable night with the mysterious star elf prince, Orlan. What begins as a shocking encounter soon turns into a contract marriage, a battle against prejudice, and a destiny neither of them could have imagined. As Lyra struggles to earn the respect of the pureblood elves, she discovers that the greatest challenges are not only outside the palace, but also hidden deep within her own past. With Orlan standing by her side, her incredible magical abilities slowly awaken, revealing a power that has been sleeping inside her for years. At the same time, dangerous enemies, ancient prophecies, and long-buried royal secrets begin to surface, leading to a truth that could change the future of the entire elf kingdom. So grab your favorite snack, sit back, and enjoy this magical adventure as we explore every important moment of The Elf Prince is My Baby Daddy from beginning to end. Lyra had spent her entire life believing she would never truly belong anywhere. Born to a human mother and an elf father who disappeared before she could remember his face, she grew up on the edge of the Emerald Forest, where the towering silver trees marked the border between the human villages and the ancient kingdom of the elves. Humans thought she looked too unusual because of her pointed ears and glowing green eyes, while the elves looked down on her because they considered half-elves to be weak and impure. Every day was a struggle to prove that she deserved the same respect as everyone else. Instead of complaining, Lyra buried herself in hard work. She collected magical herbs, delivered healing potions to nearby towns, and quietly dreamed that one day she would find a place where no one judged her for the blood flowing through her veins. Although life often felt lonely, she never allowed bitterness to consume her heart. She believed kindness was stronger than hatred, even when the world gave her very little kindness in return. Unknown to Lyra, the peaceful forest she called home was hiding secrets that stretched back centuries. Deep within the enchanted woods stood the Celestial Kingdom, a magnificent realm ruled by powerful elves whose magic flowed from the stars themselves. Among them lived Prince Orlan, the eldest son of the royal family and the strongest star elf of his generation. Since childhood, Orlan had been trained to become the future king. He mastered ancient spells, commanded celestial energy, and protected the kingdom from creatures born from darkness. To the people, he was a fearless warrior and the symbol of hope. Yet behind his calm expression, Orlan carried an enormous burden. A mysterious prophecy foretold that the Star Kingdom would eventually fall unless the prince found the woman destined to awaken an ancient power that had been lost for generations. Every noble family desperately wanted their daughters to become Orlan's bride, believing the royal marriage would bring endless honor and influence. However, no matter how many elegant princesses or talented noblewomen he met, Orlan never felt the magical bond described in the prophecy. As the years passed, pressure from the royal council grew stronger, and whispers spread throughout the kingdom that perhaps the prophecy itself had been wrong. One evening, while gathering rare moon lilies deep inside the forbidden forest, Lyra accidentally crossed into territory protected by ancient magic. She had entered the woods only because a sick child in her village desperately needed the glowing flowers to complete a healing potion. Ignoring the warning signs carved into the trees, she carefully searched beneath the silver branches until an unexpected wave of magical energy shook the ground beneath her feet. Brilliant blue light burst through the forest, forcing her to shield her eyes. At the center of the glowing clearing stood Prince Orlan, surrounded by floating stars that circled around him like tiny galaxies. He had been performing a sacred ritual designed to strengthen the kingdom's magical barrier, but the ritual suddenly became unstable when an ancient dark force attempted to break through the seal. Before Orlan could regain control, the violent magic exploded in every direction. Without thinking about her own safety, Lyra rushed forward after seeing the prince collapse from the overwhelming surge of energy. Although she had never met him before, she could sense that the strange power surrounding him was slowly consuming his life. Instinctively, she reached out and placed her hands against his chest, hoping her small amount of healing magic might ease his pain. The moment their hands touched, an extraordinary burst of emerald and silver light surrounded them both. The violent magical storm instantly calmed, and the broken seal repaired itself as though responding to an invisible command. Neither Lyra nor Orlan understood what had happened, but for the first time in his life, Orlan felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his soul. The magical mark hidden beneath his collarbone glowed brightly, while a delicate leaf-shaped symbol appeared on Lyra's wrist before disappearing just as quickly. It lasted only a few seconds, yet it changed both of their destinies forever. When the royal guards arrived, they found the prince standing beside an unknown half-elf. Instead of thanking her for saving his life, several nobles immediately accused Lyra of interfering with sacred royal magic. They called her reckless and claimed that a half-blood could never survive inside a holy ritual unless she had used forbidden magic. Lyra tried to explain that she only wanted to help, but no one listened. Just as the guards prepared to arrest her, Orlan stepped forward and ordered everyone to stand down. His voice was calm, yet carried the unquestionable authority of the crown prince. He declared that the young woman had saved both his life and the kingdom's magical barrier. Although the nobles reluctantly obeyed, their suspicious eyes never left Lyra. They believed the prince had been enchanted, and from that very moment, many powerful families quietly began treating Lyra as an enemy. After returning to the palace, Orlan could not stop thinking about the mysterious half-elf. Every magical artifact examined by the royal scholars confirmed something impossible. The ancient prophecy had finally reacted, and the glowing symbol that appeared during the ritual matched records written thousands of years earlier. According to those forgotten texts, only the prince's true destined partner could stabilize the sacred star magic. Yet nothing about Lyra matched the expectations of the royal court. She was not a noble, had received no formal magical education, and possessed mixed blood that many elves considered shameful. The elders insisted there had to be some mistake, but the magical evidence refused to disappear. Meanwhile, Lyra returned to her quiet village believing she would never see the prince again. She had no idea that the entire royal court was already debating her future. Days later, strange events began happening around Lyra. Flowers bloomed wherever she walked. Injured animals recovered the moment she touched them, and vines seemed to move on their own whenever she felt strong emotions. At first she dismissed these incidents as coincidence, but the magical energy inside her continued growing stronger every day. Even the oldest healers in the village admitted they had never witnessed anything like it. While Lyra struggled to understand these mysterious powers, royal messengers arrived at her doorstep carrying a golden invitation sealed with the crest of the Star Kingdom. Prince Orlan personally requested her presence at the royal palace, claiming he needed to discuss matters that could determine the future of both their lives. Confused and nervous, Lyra accepted the invitation, unaware that powerful enemies had already begun plotting against her. Noble families feared that if the prince truly chose a half-elf, centuries of pure-blood traditions would collapse overnight. Hidden within the palace walls, ambitious politicians and jealous noblewomen started preparing schemes to destroy Lyra's reputation before she even stepped inside the royal capital. None of them realized that the quiet young woman they underestimated carried a secret far greater than anyone could imagine. Deep within her blood slept an ancient royal lineage connected to the forgotten Wood Elf Kingdom, a truth hidden since the day she was born. As Lyra traveled toward the shining capital, she believed she was simply answering the prince's request. In reality, she was walking toward a destiny that would reshape the future of every elf kingdom forever. Lyra's journey to the Star Kingdom took 3 days, and every mile brought her farther away from the quiet life she had always known. The narrow forest trails gradually turned into beautiful crystal roads that shimmered beneath the sunlight, leading toward the magnificent royal capital. Towering silver trees surrounded the city, their glowing leaves creating a magical sky that sparkled even during the day. Waterfalls floated in midair, streams of starlight flowed through elegant canals, and enormous white towers stretched toward the heavens, as if they were trying to touch the stars themselves. The capital was far more breathtaking than anything Lyra had ever imagined, yet she could not ignore the uncomfortable feeling that followed her wherever she went. Citizens stopped walking to stare at her, whispering among themselves as they noticed her simple clothes and unmistakable half-elf features. Some looked curious, while others openly displayed disgust. Lyra lowered her eyes and continued walking, reminding herself that she had come only because the prince had asked for her help. Inside the royal palace, Prince Orlan waited in the Hall of Stars, a place reserved for the kingdom's most important ceremonies. Although his expression remained calm, his thoughts were anything but peaceful. Ever since the ritual in the forest, he had secretly investigated everything connected to Lyra. Every ancient scroll he studied pointed toward the same unbelievable conclusion. The prophecy was no longer dormant. It had awakened the moment Lyra touched him. The royal scholars confirmed that the magical connection between them could not be broken by ordinary means. However, convincing the royal court was another matter entirely. Many influential nobles argued that a half-elf could never become the future queen, regardless of what the prophecy claimed. Some even suggested hiding Lyra somewhere far from the capital to prevent public outrage. Orlan rejected every proposal. He had witnessed her courage with his own eyes, and something deep inside his heart told him that fate had chosen wisely, even if the kingdom refused to believe it. When Lyra finally entered the Hall of Stars, the room fell completely silent. Hundreds of nobles turned to look at her, their expressions filled with disbelief. She had expected to meet only the prince, but instead she found herself standing before the king, the queen, the royal council, and representatives from every noble family. The overwhelming attention made her heart race, yet she stood as confidently as she could. She bowed respectfully before the royal family, unsure why she had been summoned in front of so many people. Before she could ask a single question, an elderly council member stepped forward and accused her of manipulating the prince through unknown magic. Murmurs spread throughout the hall as several nobles nodded in agreement. They insisted that no ordinary half-elf possessed enough power to stabilize the sacred ritual. To them, Lyra's existence alone seemed impossible. Rather than allowing the accusations to continue, Orlan rose from his seat and walked directly toward her. His calm voice echoed through the enormous chamber as he explained exactly what had happened during the ritual. He made it clear that Lyra had risked her own life to save him without expecting anything in return. The magical reaction between them had not been created by tricks or forbidden spells. It had happened naturally, something that only destiny itself could accomplish. Even so, many members of the council remained unconvinced. One noblewoman named Lady Seraphine, whose family had hoped she would marry Orlan, openly challenged Lyra. She claimed that if Lyra truly possessed extraordinary magic, she should prove it before everyone. Lyra felt trapped. She had never asked for this attention, nor had she ever trained as a royal mage. She quietly admitted that she did not understand the strange powers awakening inside her. Her honest answer only encouraged the nobles to laugh. Several of them mocked her humble background, insisting she was completely unworthy of standing beside the future king. Their cruel words echoed through the hall, but before the humiliation could continue, something unexpected happened. One of the palace's ancient crystal pillars suddenly cracked, releasing unstable magical energy that threatened everyone nearby. Panic spread through the chamber as glowing shards floated into the air, ready to explode. Experienced royal mages rushed forward, but none of their spells could calm the raging magic. Instinctively, Lyra stepped closer to the damaged crystal. Without speaking a single spell, she placed her hand against its glowing surface. The emerald mark that had briefly appeared in the forest suddenly returned, shining brighter than ever before. Soft green vines wrapped around the broken crystal, while golden flowers bloomed from the cracks. Within seconds, the damaged pillar completely restored itself. The violent magical energy disappeared as though it had never existed. The entire hall stood frozen in silence. Even the oldest royal mages admitted they had never witnessed such pure natural magic. Unlike star magic, which drew its strength from the heavens, Lyra's power came directly from the living world itself. The king watched everything carefully without saying a word. Although he had remained neutral throughout the arguments, what he had just witnessed reminded him of legends that had nearly been forgotten. Thousands of years earlier, the Wood Elf Kingdom had been famous for exactly this kind of magic. Their rulers could heal forests, restore ancient life, and communicate with nature itself. That royal family had mysteriously disappeared centuries ago after a devastating war, leaving many historians to believe the entire bloodline had become extinct. As he observed the glowing symbol fading from Lyra's wrist, an impossible question entered his mind. Could the lost royal bloodline have survived all these years? Later that evening, Orlan privately thanked Lyra for enduring the painful meeting. He apologized for the way the nobles had treated her and admitted that bringing her before the council without warning had been unfair. Lyra smiled gently despite everything that had happened. She explained that prejudice was something she had faced her entire life, but she never expected to experience it inside a royal palace. Instead of feeling angry, she simply wished people would judge her by her actions rather than by her blood. Her words left a deep impression on Orlan. Most nobles fought endlessly for wealth and power, yet Lyra desired nothing except acceptance and peace. As the conversation continued, Orlan finally revealed the real reason he had invited her to the capital. He showed her the ancient prophecy hidden inside the royal archives. According to the old writings, the future of the Star Kingdom depended on a union between the Star Prince and a woman blessed by the Forgotten Forests. Their bond would restore balance between celestial magic and nature, protecting the world from a darkness that would one day return. Lyra listened in complete disbelief. She had always considered herself an ordinary half-elf struggling to survive. The idea that an ancient prophecy could involve her seemed impossible. Yet every strange event since the night in the forest pointed toward the same truth. Before either of them could discuss the prophecy further, urgent news arrived from the palace guards. A powerful magical beast had appeared near one of the kingdom's sacred forests, destroying everything in its path. Even more alarming, the creature seemed drawn toward the royal capital itself. As alarms echoed throughout the palace, Orlan immediately prepared to lead the royal knights into battle. Without hesitation, Lyra insisted on going with him. She did not fully understand her new abilities, but something inside her heart whispered that the mysterious creature and her awakening magic were somehow connected. Neither of them realized that this attack was only the beginning of a much larger conspiracy, one that had been silently growing in the shadows for many years. The enemies hiding behind the scenes had finally begun making their move, and Lyra was about to discover that her greatest challenge had only just begun. The royal army reached the edge of the Sacred Moon Forest before sunrise. Thick silver mist covered the ground, and the usual songs of birds had been replaced by an eerie silence. Even the oldest knights admitted they had never seen the forest so lifeless. Trees that had stood for centuries were blackened as though their life had been drained away, while glowing flowers had withered into dust. Every sign pointed to the work of dark magic. Prince Orlan rode at the front of the army, his silver armor reflecting the faint light of dawn. Beside him, Lyra sat quietly on her horse, trying to calm the strange feeling growing inside her chest. The closer they came to the forest, the stronger the invisible connection became, almost as if the trees themselves were calling her name. The knights spread out and carefully searched the area. Suddenly, a terrifying roar echoed through the valley. The ground trembled beneath their feet as a massive beast burst from the shadows. It looked like a giant wolf, but its body was covered in black crystal armor, and crimson flames burned inside its eyes. Dark energy surrounded the creature, poisoning everything it touched. Several knights immediately attacked, launching powerful magical arrows and celestial spells. To everyone's shock, the beast barely slowed down. Its thick armor absorbed every attack before it charged straight toward the soldiers. Within moments, dozens of warriors were thrown across the battlefield. Chaos spread through the forest as commanders struggled to reorganize their forces. Orlan leaped forward without hesitation. Drawing his legendary Starblade, he unleashed a brilliant wave of celestial energy that split the sky itself. The powerful strike forced the monster backward, leaving a glowing wound across its armored body. However, instead of weakening, the creature became even more violent. Dark smoke poured from the wound before sealing it completely. Orlan frowned as he realized this was no ordinary magical beast. Someone had deliberately corrupted it with forbidden magic. As he prepared another attack, the beast suddenly changed direction and charged directly toward Lyra. The entire battlefield froze. Lyra had never faced a monster of this size before, yet instead of running, she remained standing. Deep inside her heart, an unfamiliar voice whispered for her to stay calm. She slowly reached out her hand as the enormous beast rushed toward her. Just before it could strike, brilliant emerald light exploded from her body. Countless glowing vines burst from the ground, wrapping around the monster's legs and holding it in place. At the same time, golden flowers bloomed across the damaged earth, purifying the black corruption surrounding the creature. The terrifying wolf let out a painful cry as the darkness slowly separated from its body, like black smoke being pulled into the air. Everyone watched in complete disbelief. Lyra wasn't attacking the beast, she was healing it. As the corruption disappeared, the black crystal armor shattered, revealing a magnificent silver guardian wolf beneath it. The creature's crimson eyes returned to their original sapphire blue color. Instead of continuing the fight, the guardian lowered its head respectfully before Lyra, as though recognizing her authority. The ancient wolf gently touched its forehead against her hand before disappearing into the forest without causing any further harm. Silence filled the battlefield. Even the experienced royal mages could not explain what they had just witnessed. Prince Orlan slowly approached Lyra, unable to hide the amazement in his eyes. Ancient guardian beasts served only those connected to the oldest magical bloodlines. If the guardian had bowed before Lyra, it could only mean one thing. Her connection to the ancient forest was far greater than anyone had imagined. The knights, who had doubted her only hours earlier, now looked at her with a mixture of respect and confusion. Back at the royal palace, news of the battle spread faster than wildfire. Many ordinary citizens celebrated Lyra as the mysterious young woman who had saved both the army and the sacred moon forest. However, not everyone welcomed the growing admiration. Inside a luxurious mansion overlooking the capital, Lady Seraphine smashed a crystal goblet against the floor as she listened to the reports. Every achievement Lyra earned pushed Seraphine farther away from her lifelong dream of becoming the future queen. Her jealousy slowly transformed into hatred. Convinced that Lyra had somehow stolen her destiny, Seraphine secretly met with several influential nobles who shared her fears. Together, they agreed that if Lyra remained alive, the traditions of the pureblood elves would eventually collapse. While the conspirators prepared their next move, King Aldrin quietly visited the royal archives beneath the palace. The underground library contained countless forgotten records that few people were even allowed to see. Accompanied by the kingdom's oldest historian, the king searched through dusty scrolls describing the lost Wood Elf Kingdom. After hours of reading, they uncovered a faded painting hidden inside an ancient manuscript. The woman in the painting wore a crown made of living vines, and on her wrist was the exact same emerald symbol that had appeared on Lyra during the battle. The historian's hands trembled as he whispered that the painting depicted Queen Illyria, the last known ruler of the Wood Elves before their kingdom vanished centuries ago. If Lyra truly carried the same magical mark, then history itself might need to be rewritten. That evening, Orlan invited Lyra to walk through the palace gardens, hoping she could relax after everything that had happened. For the first time since arriving at the capital, she smiled without fear. The gardens were filled with glowing flowers that opened only beneath the moonlight, and gentle streams reflected the stars above. As they walked together, Orlan admitted that before meeting her, he had accepted his life would always be controlled by royal duty. Every decision, every friendship, and even his future marriage had been chosen by tradition. Lyra's arrival had changed that. She reminded him that true strength came from compassion, not pride. Lyra laughed softly, telling him she still felt like an ordinary girl who had accidentally wandered into a fairy tale. Their conversation flowed naturally, and without realizing it, both of them began lowering the emotional walls they had built over many years. Watching from a distant balcony, Queen Eleonora quietly observed the pair together. Unlike many members of the royal court, she judged people by their character rather than their bloodline. She could clearly see the genuine trust growing between her son and the young half-elf. Yet her mother's instincts also warned her that danger was approaching. Too many powerful families stood to lose influence if Lyra became part of the royal family. Sooner or later, someone would stop relying on political games and attempt something far more deadly. Her fears proved correct sooner than expected. Deep beneath the capital, inside forgotten tunnels abandoned after an ancient war, Hooded figures gathered around a circle of black flames. Standing among them was a mysterious man whose face remained hidden beneath a silver mask. He listened calmly as one of his followers reported that the guardian beast had failed and that Lyra's powers were awakening much faster than expected. Instead of becoming angry, the masked man smiled. He revealed that the attack had never been intended to kill Lyra. It had merely been a test to confirm whether the lost bloodline truly existed. Now that he had his answer, the real plan could finally begin. Raising a dark crystal filled with swirling shadows, he declared that the heir of the Wood Elf Kingdom must never be allowed to claim her throne. If she did, an ancient power sealed centuries ago would awaken once again, and this time, nothing would be able to stop it. The peaceful days following the battle did not last long. Although the citizens of the Star Kingdom celebrated the restoration of the Sacred Moon Forest, a heavy tension settled over the royal palace. Guards doubled their patrols, royal mages strengthened magical barriers around the capital, and secret meetings became a daily occurrence. Everyone understood that the attack on the guardian beast had not been an accident. Someone powerful was moving in the shadows, carefully testing the kingdom's defenses. Prince Orlan spent countless hours discussing strategy with the king and the royal council, but every meeting ended with more questions than answers. No one knew who their hidden enemy was or why Lyra had become the center of the mysterious attacks. The only certainty was that she was no longer safe anywhere outside the palace walls. For Lyra, life inside the palace remained surprisingly difficult despite everything she had accomplished. Many servants treated her kindly after witnessing her bravery, but the noble families refused to change their opinions. During royal dinners, whispers followed her wherever she sat. Some nobles politely smiled in front of the prince while secretly mocking her behind his back. Others openly questioned whether someone of mixed blood should even be allowed inside the royal residence. Lyra tried to ignore the cruel remarks, but they still found their way into her heart. She often wondered if the kingdom would ever truly accept her, no matter how much she sacrificed for it. Yet every time those doubts appeared, Orlan reminded her that real worth was measured by actions rather than ancestry. One afternoon, the royal family invited Lyra to the Hall of Ancient Roots, a sacred chamber that only members of the royal bloodline were allowed to enter. At the center of the chamber stood the Tree of Memories, an enormous silver tree whose glowing roots stretched deep beneath the palace. According to legend, the tree preserved fragments of history and could recognize the bloodlines of every royal family that had ever existed. The king explained that he wanted to perform a harmless test to learn more about Lyra's mysterious powers. Although nervous, she agreed. Slowly, she stepped toward the ancient tree and placed both hands against its smooth bark. For several silent seconds, nothing happened. Then the entire chamber erupted in brilliant emerald light. The silver leaves transformed into glowing green ones, while golden vines spread across the walls like living rivers. The roots beneath the floor pulsed with powerful energy as ancient symbols appeared one after another around Lyra's feet. Suddenly, ghostly images emerged from the glowing tree. They showed a magnificent kingdom hidden deep inside endless forests, where elegant palaces were built from living trees instead of stone. Thousands of elves dressed in green and gold stood proudly before a young queen, wearing a crown woven from flowers and emerald branches. The queen slowly turned toward Lyra, and everyone gasped. Their faces were nearly identical. The vision disappeared as quickly as it had begun. The chamber fell completely silent except for the sound of everyone's breathing. Even the royal historians looked stunned. There was no longer any doubt. The Tree of Memories had recognized Lyra as a direct descendant of the ancient Wood Elf royal family. The kingdom that historians believed had vanished forever had left behind a single surviving heir. Lyra herself stood frozen, unable to process what she had just seen. She had spent her entire life believing she was an unwanted half-elf with no place in the world. Now she was being told that she carried the blood of an entire lost kingdom. King Aldrin gently explained everything the historians knew. Hundreds of years earlier, the Wood Elf Kingdom had mysteriously disappeared during a devastating war against an enemy known only as the Shadow Court. The surviving records ended suddenly, as though someone had deliberately erased their history. The royal family had been declared extinct, and the remaining Wood Elves scattered across the continent. Since then, the balance between nature magic and celestial magic had slowly weakened. If Lyra truly carried the last royal bloodline, then her existence could restore powers that had been dormant for centuries. But it also meant that anyone responsible for destroying the Wood Elf Kingdom would see her as a dangerous threat. While the king spoke, Orlon quietly watched Lyra. He could see the confusion in her eyes. Becoming the heir of a forgotten kingdom was not an honor she had asked for. It was a burden that arrived without warning. He gently assured her that she would not have to face it alone. Whether she chose to embrace her destiny or reject it entirely, he would stand beside her. His sincere words eased some of the fear growing inside her heart. For the first time since arriving at the palace, Lyra realized she truly trusted him. Unfortunately, not everyone welcomed this discovery. Hidden behind a carved wooden screen, Lady Seraphine secretly listened to the entire conversation. Her face turned pale as she realized Lyra was no ordinary half-elf, but the rightful heir to an ancient royal bloodline. If this news became public, no noble family would ever be able to challenge Lyra's position beside the prince. Desperate to protect her own ambitions, Seraphine made a reckless decision. That very night, she secretly slipped out of the palace and traveled to an abandoned temple beyond the capital, where the mysterious masked man and his followers waited in darkness. The masked leader listened carefully as Seraphine revealed everything she had overheard. Instead of expressing surprise, he calmly thanked her for confirming what he had already suspected. He then revealed a shocking truth that left Seraphine speechless. The destruction of the Wood Elf Kingdom centuries ago had not been an accident. It had been carefully planned by an organization that still existed today. For generations, the Shadow Court had hunted every surviving member of the Wood Elf royal family to prevent the awakening of an ancient source of magic known as the Heart of the Forest. They believed that if the rightful heir ever reclaimed that power, their own empire of darkness would collapse forever. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the betrayal unfolding outside the palace, Lyra began training under the kingdom's greatest mages. Unlike traditional star magic, her abilities could not be controlled through ordinary spells. Instead, she learned by listening to nature itself. Every tree, flower, river, and breeze seemed eager to teach her something new. With each passing day, her connection to the living world grew stronger. She could heal dying plants with a single touch, communicate with forest animals through emotions instead of words, and even sense hidden magical energy buried beneath the earth. The instructors quickly realized they were no longer teaching Lyra. They were simply watching ancient magic awaken naturally within her. Late one evening, after another exhausting day of training, Lyra stood alone on a palace balcony overlooking the endless forest. The night sky glittered with thousands of stars, while a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers. She quietly wondered what her real parents had been like and why they had hidden the truth for so many years. Before she could think any further, a soft golden light appeared among the trees far below. At first, she assumed it was another magical creature. But as the light moved closer, it slowly took the shape of a beautiful white owl with glowing emerald eyes. The mysterious bird landed on the balcony railing and gently dropped a small crystal pendant into Lyra's hands before disappearing into the darkness. The moment Lyra touched the pendant, countless unfamiliar memories flashed through her mind. She saw a baby wrapped in green silk, a desperate woman running through a burning forest, and a voice whispering only 4 words before everything faded into silence. Find the hidden sanctuary. Before Lyra could tell anyone what she had seen, the pendant began glowing brightly. Somewhere deep within the ancient forests, a forgotten temple had just awakened, as though it had been waiting centuries for its true princess to finally come home. Lyra barely slept after receiving the mysterious crystal pendant. Every time she closed her eyes, the same vision returned. She saw towering trees surrounded by golden mist, ancient stone gates covered in glowing vines, and the desperate woman from her memory reaching out as though trying to warn her about something. The final words echoed through her mind again and again, find the hidden sanctuary. When morning arrived, she immediately brought the pendant to Prince Orlon. The moment he touched it, the crystal released a faint pulse of emerald light before returning to normal. Even though he could not see the memories that Lyra had witnessed, he could clearly feel the ancient magic sleeping inside the artifact. It was older than the Star Kingdom itself. King Aldrin summoned the royal historians, scholars, and mages to examine the pendant. After several hours of careful study, the oldest historian finally recognized the symbol carved into its surface. According to forgotten records, it belonged to the Guardians of the Hidden Sanctuary, a secret order created by the Wood Elf royal family long before their kingdom disappeared. Their mission had been simple but dangerous: protect the royal bloodline and hide the heart of the forest from anyone who wished to misuse its power. The historian admitted that most people believed both the sanctuary and its guardians had vanished centuries ago. If the pendant had truly appeared before Lyra, then someone, or something, inside the sanctuary was still waiting for the rightful heir. The discovery immediately divided the royal council. Several advisors argued that searching for the sanctuary was too dangerous. If the mysterious enemy hunting Lyra learned about the heart of the forest, they would certainly attack before the kingdom had time to prepare. Others believed the sanctuary might contain knowledge capable of defeating the growing darkness. The debate lasted for hours until Orlan stood and made his decision. He would personally lead a small expedition to escort Lyra into the ancient forest. A large army would only attract attention, but a small group could travel quietly and investigate the truth. Although the king worried about his son's safety, he reluctantly agreed. Time was running out, and they needed answers before their enemies made the next move. Not everyone supported the expedition. Lady Seraphine smiled politely during the meeting, pretending to care about Lyra's safety, but behind her graceful appearance, she had already sent another secret message to the Shadow Court. Every detail of the planned journey, including the route, the number of guards, and the expected departure date, was delivered directly to the masked leader. In return, he promised Seraphine that once Lyra was eliminated, the prince would have no choice but to marry a pure-blood noblewoman. Blinded by ambition, Seraphine never stopped to question whether she could truly trust the mysterious organization she had joined. 3 days later, Orlan, Lyra, Captain Rowan, and 6 elite royal knights quietly left the capital before sunrise. Instead of traveling along the main roads, they followed forgotten forest paths marked only on ancient maps. The deeper they ventured into the wilderness, the stranger the world became. Trees grew taller than castle towers. Glowing butterflies floated through the air like tiny stars, and rivers shimmered with magical energy. Lyra noticed something unusual. Every living creature they encountered seemed calm in her presence. Deer approached without fear, colorful birds landed on nearby branches, and even fierce forest wolves simply watched her before disappearing peacefully into the trees. It was as though nature itself recognized her long before she understood who she truly was. On the 4th evening, the group reached a valley hidden beneath enormous emerald cliffs. According to the ancient map, the hidden sanctuary should have stood somewhere nearby. Yet despite searching for hours, they found nothing except ordinary forest. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, disappointment spread through the camp. Some of the knights wondered whether the sanctuary had simply been destroyed long ago. Lyra refused to give up. Holding the crystal pendant tightly, she slowly walked deeper into the trees, trusting the strange feeling guiding her heart. Suddenly, the pendant began glowing brighter than ever before. The forest around her transformed instantly. Invisible magical barriers dissolved like morning mist, revealing an enormous stone gateway that had been hidden in plain sight. Ancient vines covered the entrance, while golden flowers bloomed across weathered walls untouched by time. Above the gate was the same royal emblem Lyra had seen inside the Tree of Memories. As she stepped closer, the pendant floated from her hands and settled into a perfectly shaped opening at the center of the gate. A deep rumbling echoed throughout the valley as the massive doors slowly opened for the first time in centuries. Beyond the entrance lay a breathtaking sanctuary unlike anything they had imagined. Crystal lakes reflected endless sunlight, even though night had already fallen outside. Towering trees glowed with soft green light, filling the air with peaceful magical energy. Ancient statues of wood, elf kings and queens lined a wide stone path leading toward a magnificent palace grown entirely from living trees. Everything remained perfectly preserved, as though its people had left only yesterday. Yet there was no sign of anyone living there. As the group cautiously explored the silent sanctuary, An unexpected voice echoed through the gardens. The heir has finally returned. Everyone immediately reached for their weapons, but before they could react, an elderly elf stepped from behind one of the glowing trees. His long silver hair reached his waist, and his green robes were embroidered with symbols identical to those on Lyra's pendant. Despite his age, his eyes shone with remarkable strength. He introduced himself as Elder the Lion, the final guardian of the hidden sanctuary. For hundreds of years, he had protected this sacred place while waiting for the last surviving princess of the Wood Elf Kingdom. Tears filled the old guardian's eyes as he knelt before Lyra. He explained that on the night the kingdom fell, the royal family had secretly sent their infant daughter away with trusted protectors. The sanctuary had been sealed until her return, ensuring that the enemies responsible for the kingdom's destruction could never reach the heart of the forest. Lyra struggled to accept everything she was hearing. The memories from the pendant, the Tree of Memories, and now the Guardian's story all confirmed the same impossible truth. She was not simply descended from the Wood Elf royal family. She was the last living princess. Before anyone could ask more questions, the peaceful sanctuary suddenly shook violently. Explosions echoed outside the ancient walls as dark magical fire rained from the sky. Captain Rowan rushed to the entrance and watched in horror as dozens of black-cloaked warriors surrounded the valley. At their front stood the mysterious masked leader, his silver mask gleaming beneath the moonlight. He slowly raised his hand, and thousands of shadow creatures emerged from the forest like a living tide. Smiling beneath his mask, he announced that the centuries-long search was finally over. The hidden sanctuary had revealed itself exactly as he had expected, and now there would be no escape for the last princess of the Wood Elves. As the sanctuary's protective barriers trembled under the first wave of attacks, Lyra realized that the battle for her true inheritance had finally begun. The hidden sanctuary, which had remained untouched for centuries, was suddenly filled with the deafening sounds of war. Waves of shadow creatures crashed against the glowing barriers surrounding the ancient valley, their claws leaving streaks of black energy across the protective shield. Each impact sent powerful tremors through the sanctuary, causing crystal lakes to ripple and ancient trees to sway, as if they could feel the danger approaching. Elder the Lion stood at the front gate with his staff raised high, chanting forgotten spells in the language of the Wood Elves. Brilliant emerald light spread across the barrier, temporarily strengthening it, but even he knew the defense could not hold forever. The Shadow Court had waited hundreds of years for this moment. They would not leave until the sanctuary fell. Prince Orlan immediately organized the small expedition into defensive positions. Captain Rowan led the royal knights to the outer walls while Orlan climbed onto the highest platform overlooking the valley. His star blade burst into radiant silver flames as he unleashed waves of celestial magic toward the attackers. Every strike shattered dozens of shadow creatures, lighting the battlefield like falling stars. Yet for every enemy that disappeared, two more emerged from the darkness. The Shadow Court had brought an army far larger than anyone expected. It became painfully clear that this attack had been planned long before Lyra ever discovered the sanctuary. Standing beside Elder the Lion, Lyra watched the battle with growing fear. She had learned to heal, restore life, and communicate with nature, but she had never fought in a real war. The old guardian gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He explained that true rulers of the Wood Elves were never remembered because they destroyed their enemies. They were remembered because they protected life even in the darkest times. Your greatest strength has never been anger, the lion said quietly. It is the hope you give to others. His words settled deep inside Lyra's heart. Instead of focusing on the terrifying army outside, she closed her eyes and reached out with her senses toward the living forest surrounding the sanctuary. Almost instantly, she felt thousands of voices answering her call. The ancient trees, flowers, rivers, and animals recognized their long-lost princess. Emerald energy flowed through the ground beneath her feet as roots spread silently beneath the battlefield. Suddenly, enormous vines burst from the earth, wrapping around dozens of shadow creatures and pulling them away from the sanctuary walls. Towering trees shifted their massive branches, forming natural barriers to protect the defenders, while glowing flowers released clouds of golden pollen that weakened the enemy's dark magic. Even the forest itself had joined the battle. The sight stunned both armies. The royal knights had never imagined nature could fight alongside them, while the soldiers of the Shadow Court hesitated for the first time. Their moment of uncertainty allowed Orlan to launch a devastating counterattack. Raising his sword toward the heavens, he summoned a rain of celestial spears that crashed into the enemy lines with incredible force. Brilliant explosions illuminated the valley as shadow creatures disappeared one after another. Fighting side by side, Orlan and Lyra complemented each other perfectly. His star magic struck with overwhelming power, while her nature magic healed allies, restrained enemies, and restored the land damaged by the battle. Watching from the rear of his army, the masked leader remained surprisingly calm. Rather than showing frustration, he smiled beneath his silver mask. He had expected Lyra's powers to awaken eventually. In fact, he had counted on it. Turning toward one of his commanders, he quietly ordered the second phase of the operation to begin. Moments later, several cloaked assassins slipped away from the battlefield and disappeared into hidden tunnels beneath the sanctuary. Their mission had nothing to do with defeating the defenders. Instead, they were searching for the heart of the forest itself. Inside the sanctuary, Elder the Lion suddenly sensed the intruders. His face turned pale as he realized the enemy had never intended to win through brute force alone. The attack outside had simply been a distraction. He immediately told Lyra and Orlan the truth. Deep beneath the sanctuary rested the heart of the forest, an ancient source of life that maintained the balance of nature across the continent. If it fell into the Shadow Court's hands, forests would wither, magical creatures would lose their homes, and countless kingdoms would suffer. Without wasting another second, the lion led Lyra and Orlan through hidden passages beneath the sanctuary, while Captain Rowan remained behind to command the defense. The underground tunnels were unlike ordinary caves. Their walls glowed with living roots that pulsed gently like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Ancient murals covered the stone, telling the forgotten history of the Wood Elf Kingdom. As they hurried deeper underground, Lyra caught glimpses of scenes showing her ancestors protecting the heart of the forest from countless invaders. One mural depicted a young queen sacrificing her own freedom to seal away a terrible darkness. Another showed a baby princess being carried into the night as flames consumed the royal palace. Lyra's chest tightened. She finally understood that the memories from the pendant were not random visions. They were fragments of her family's final moments before the kingdom fell. Before they could reach the sacred chamber, the group encountered the enemy assassins. The narrow tunnel erupted into battle. Cloaked warriors wielding cursed blades attacked from every direction. Orlan met them head-on, his sword flashing through the darkness with incredible speed. Sparks of silver and black magic filled the tunnel as steel clashed against steel. Lyra stayed close to Elder the Lion, using vines to block attacks and healing Orlan whenever enemy weapons managed to break through his defenses. Together they fought their way forward, but the assassins were relentless, sacrificing themselves without hesitation to slow their progress. Finally, they reached the innermost chamber. At its center floated the heart of the forest, a magnificent emerald crystal suspended above a pool of shimmering water. Gentle streams of green light flowed from the crystal into the surrounding roots, nourishing the entire sanctuary. The moment Lyra stepped inside, the crystal glowed brightly, recognizing the return of its rightful heir. However, before anyone could celebrate, slow applause echoed through the chamber. The masked leader emerged from the shadows, having entered through another hidden passage. He had allowed his own assassins to delay Orlan just long enough for him to arrive first. Standing only a few steps away from the heart of the forest, he looked directly at Lyra. "Welcome home, princess," he said with an unsettling smile. "I've been waiting for this reunion for a very long time." To everyone's shock, he removed one of his gloves, revealing a strange black mark on his hand that looked disturbingly similar to the emerald symbol on Lyra's wrist. Then he spoke words that left the entire chamber frozen in silence. "You believe I destroyed your kingdom," he said calmly. "But the truth is far more complicated. I was once sworn to protect your family." Lyra stared at him in disbelief, unable to understand how the leader of the Shadow Court could possibly have served the Wood Elf royal family. As the emerald crystal pulsed between them, she realized the answers she had searched for her entire life were finally within reach. but so was a truth that could change everything she believed about her past. The underground chamber fell into complete silence after the masked leader revealed that he had once sworn loyalty to the Wood Elf royal family. Even Prince Orlan lowered his sword for a brief moment, struggling to understand how the man responsible for so much destruction could make such an unbelievable claim. Lyra stared into the stranger's eyes, searching for any sign of deception. His voice carried neither pride nor regret. Instead, it sounded strangely sorrowful, as though he had carried the weight of a painful memory for centuries. The emerald light of the heart of the forest reflected across his silver mask, making him appear like a ghost from a forgotten age. Elder the Lion immediately stepped in front of Lyra. "Do not listen to him," the old guardian warned. "His words are poison. He has spent centuries twisting the truth." But the masked man simply shook his head. Slowly, he removed the silver mask from his face, revealing a man whose appearance shocked everyone in the chamber. Although faint scars crossed one side of his face, his pointed ears and emerald eyes were unmistakable. He was a wood elf. More astonishingly, the royal emblem engraved on a pendant around his neck identified him as someone who had once belonged to the palace itself. Lyra felt a strange familiarity she could not explain, as though some forgotten memory recognized him before her mind could. "My name is Kale," he said quietly. "Long before the kingdom fell, I served as captain of your family's royal guard." His words echoed through the chamber. Elder Thalian's expression changed from anger to disbelief. He whispered Kale's name as though speaking to someone who had died centuries ago. According to every historical record, Captain Kale had sacrificed himself defending the royal palace during the final battle. Yet here he stood, alive, leading the very organization blamed for the kingdom's destruction. Kale slowly began telling the story that history had forgotten. Centuries earlier, the Wood Elf Kingdom had enjoyed an age of peace unlike any other. The heart of the forest blessed the land with endless life, and neighboring kingdoms admired its beauty. However, the immense power hidden within the sacred crystal also attracted dangerous ambitions. A secret group of powerful rulers believed no single kingdom should possess such extraordinary magic. Fearing that someone would eventually misuse the heart, disagreements erupted within the royal court itself. Some believed the crystal should remain protected forever, while others argued it should be shared to maintain balance throughout the world. As political tensions grew, betrayal spread from within. Kale revealed that several trusted nobles secretly allied themselves with outsiders hungry for the heart's power. When the final attack came, the kingdom did not fall because its enemies were stronger. It fell because its own people opened the gates from the inside. The royal family fought bravely, but by then it was already too late. Queen Illyria's final command had been simple: save the infant princess and ensure the heart of the forest never fell into the wrong hands. Kale claimed he had obeyed that order. He helped smuggle baby Lyra out of the burning kingdom, while Elder the Lion escorted the heart into the hidden sanctuary. But why create the Shadow Court? Orlan demanded, refusing to lower his guard. Kale sighed deeply before answering. He explained that after the kingdom's destruction, he hunted the traitors responsible for the massacre. Over time, his mission grew darker. Every kingdom he visited sought the heart of the forest for its own benefit. Greed, jealousy, and the desire for power seemed endless. Eventually, Kale became convinced that no ruler, not even a kind one, could be trusted with such limitless magic. He formed the Shadow Court not to conquer the world, but to prevent anyone from awakening the heart again. Unfortunately, the methods he chose transformed him into the very monster he had once sworn to fight. Lyra listened carefully, her emotions torn in every direction. She could sense genuine pain in Kale's words, but she also remembered the countless innocent lives that had suffered because of the Shadow Court. Entire villages had been attacked. Families had been separated. Sacred forests had been corrupted. Whatever noble purpose Kale might once have carried had long ago been consumed by fear and obsession. She stepped forward and met his gaze without hesitation. "You may have wanted to protect the world once," Lyra said softly, "but protecting people can never mean destroying them." For the first time, Kale's calm expression wavered. He looked at Lyra and saw not only the last Wood Elf princess, but also the compassion that had defined Queen Illyria. The same kindness he had once vowed to defend still lived within her. Yet years of hatred could not disappear in a single conversation. Slowly raising his hand, Kale activated the black mark on his palm. Dark energy surged through the chamber, wrapping around the heart of the forest like chains. The emerald crystal began losing its brilliant glow as black shadows spread across its surface. Elder the Lion cried out in horror. If the corruption reached the crystal's core, the balance of nature would collapse. Rivers would dry, forests would die, and magical life across the continent would begin fading away. Without waiting for instructions, Orlan charged toward Kale, his star blade blazing with celestial fire. Their swords collided with tremendous force, sending shockwaves through the chamber. The battle between the two warriors was unlike anything Lyra had ever witnessed. Kale fought with incredible precision, combining ancient wood elf techniques with forbidden shadow magic. Orlan answered every strike with overwhelming celestial power, refusing to allow the enemy another step toward the crystal. Meanwhile, Lyra rushed toward the heart of the forest. Ignoring the dark energy surrounding it, she placed both hands against the glowing crystal. Instantly, unbearable pain shot through her body as the corruption tried to consume her own magic. Memories flooded her mind. Her mother smiling gently before placing the crystal pendant around her neck, Queen Illyria embracing her newborn daughter, and countless generations of wood elf rulers protecting the sacred heart through sacrifice rather than force. Tears rolled down Lyra's cheeks as she realized the true purpose of the royal bloodline. The heart of the forest could never be controlled through power alone. It responded only to selfless love and the desire to protect life. Drawing strength from those memories, Lyra closed her eyes and allowed every part of her heart to connect with the crystal. Brilliant emerald light erupted throughout the chamber. The black chains shattered one after another, and waves of pure natural magic spread in every direction. The corrupted roots surrounding the chamber blossomed with fresh leaves, while golden flowers covered the once dark stone floor. The heart of the forest had accepted Lyra as its rightful guardian. The overwhelming surge of energy forced everyone backward, including Kale. He looked at the restored crystal with a mixture of awe and sadness. For centuries he had believed only absolute control could protect the world, yet the heart had answered Lyra's compassion instead of his strength. Before anyone could react further, a violent earthquake shook the sanctuary. Massive cracks spread across the chamber floor as an ancient seal hidden beneath the heart of the forest began to break. Elder Thalian's face turned pale with fear. No, he whispered. The heart wasn't only protecting the forests. It was imprisoning something far worse. A deafening roar echoed from the darkness below. Black flames burst through the widening cracks, and a colossal shadow slowly began rising from beneath the sanctuary. Kale stared at the awakening creature in horror. For the first time since revealing his identity, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. "We're too late," he said quietly. "The ancient void dragon has awakened." The earth continued shaking as the enormous cracks beneath the heart of the forest widened. A terrifying roar echoed through every corner of the hidden sanctuary, so powerful that even the ancient trees bent under its force. Black flames erupted from the depths, filling the chamber with suffocating darkness. Everyone instinctively stepped back except Lyra, who remained standing before the glowing crystal. She could feel the heart of the forest trembling beneath her hands, not from fear, but from exhaustion. It had spent centuries sealing away an ancient evil, and the constant corruption from the Shadow Court had weakened that prison. The seal had finally reached its limit. Slowly, a gigantic creature emerged from the abyss below. Its body was covered in black scales harder than diamond, while crimson cracks glowed across its enormous wings like rivers of molten fire. Two golden eyes opened in the darkness, radiating a hatred so ancient that even experienced warriors found it difficult to breathe. The creature stretched its wings, and the chamber itself seemed too small to contain its massive body. Elder the Lion immediately fell to one knee, recognizing the monster from forgotten legends. It was the ancient Void Dragon, the first enemy ever defeated by the combined strength of the Star Elves and the Wood Elves thousands of years ago. Instead of killing the immortal beast, their ancestors had sealed it beneath the heart of the forest, knowing it could never truly be destroyed. The dragon laughed, its deep voice shaking the walls around them. It thanked the Shadow Court for weakening the ancient seal and welcomed the return of the royal bloodline that had imprisoned it so long ago. Kale tightened his grip on his sword, his face filled with regret. He had wanted to prevent the heart from being used, never realizing that his actions had nearly freed an even greater threat. For the first time in centuries, he understood the terrible mistake he had made. His obsession with control had blinded him to the true purpose of the sanctuary. Without warning, the Void Dragon unleashed a blast of black fire across the chamber. Prince Orlan reacted instantly, raising his star blade to create a massive shield of celestial energy. The attack slammed into the glowing barrier with incredible force, sending Orlan sliding backward across the stone floor. Even with all his strength, he could barely withstand the dragon's overwhelming power. Captain Rowan and the Royal Knights, who had finally fought their way into the chamber, joined the battle immediately. Arrows infused with star magic flew toward the dragon, but they shattered harmlessly against its scales. Ordinary attacks were almost useless. Realizing the danger, Lyra called upon the heart of the forest once again. Brilliant emerald light spread through the sanctuary, healing injured soldiers and restoring the damaged walls. Countless glowing vines wrapped around the dragon's enormous legs, attempting to hold it in place. For a few brief moments, the creature struggled against nature itself. But with one mighty roar, the dragon tore through the vines, proving that even the awakened heart could not defeat it alone. Kale watched the battle in silence before making a decision that surprised everyone. He walked toward Orlan and lowered his weapon. "If we continue fighting each other," he admitted, "none of us will survive." Orlan stared at him cautiously, unsure whether to trust the former guardian. Yet the dragon was already breaking through the chamber, and there was no time left for old grudges. After a long moment, Orlan nodded. For the first time in centuries, the Prince of the Star Elves and the former captain of the Wood Elf Kingdom stood side by side against a common enemy. Their combined attack lit up the entire sanctuary. Orlan summoned brilliant beams of celestial light from the heavens, while Kale unleashed ancient Wood Elf sword techniques enhanced by shadow energy he had mastered over the centuries. Together, they struck the dragon's wings, forcing the giant creature backward. Although the attack failed to defeat it, it created the opening Lyra desperately needed. Guided by the heart of the forest, she discovered that the dragon's true weakness was not its body but the darkness imprisoned inside its soul. Long ago, the dragon had not been born evil. It had been corrupted by a mysterious force known as the Eternal Void. The heart revealed another forgotten truth. The Star Elves and Wood Elves had never defeated the dragon through strength alone. They had worked together, combining celestial light and nature's life force to purify the darkness consuming it. The same miracle would have to happen again. Lyra shared the revelation with Orlan. Without hesitation, he stepped beside her. Their hands met naturally as emerald and silver light began flowing together. The magical bond that had first awakened during their meeting in the Sacred Moon Forest now shone brighter than ever before. Nature and starlight merged into a breathtaking stream of golden energy that surrounded both of them. Every tree inside the sanctuary glowed with renewed life, while stars appeared above the chamber despite the underground ceiling. Even the heart of the forest pulsed in harmony with Orlan's celestial magic. As their combined power reached its peak, the glowing energy formed a magnificent spear of emerald and silver light. Lyra and Orlan released it together. The spear flew across the chamber and pierced the dragon's chest, not with destructive force, but with pure healing magic. The creature let out a deafening cry as black shadows poured from its body like smoke being driven away by sunlight. Slowly, the crimson cracks across its scales faded, and its terrifying golden eyes softened into a brilliant sapphire blue. The dragon collapsed to the ground. Instead of roaring with rage, it lowered its enormous head before Lyra and Orlan. The darkness controlling it for thousands of years had finally disappeared. Elder the Lion smiled with tears in his eyes. The ancient alliance between the Star Elves and the Wood Elves had been restored exactly as the oldest prophecies had promised. For a brief moment, everyone believed the battle was finally over. Then the entire sanctuary began collapsing. The heart of the forest, weakened after releasing so much power, started losing its light. Massive pieces of stone crashed from the ceiling, and deep cracks spread through every wall. Elder the Lion quickly realized what was happening. The sanctuary itself had been created by the heart's magic. Now that the ancient seal was broken and the dragon had been purified, the hidden sanctuary had fulfilled its purpose. It was beginning to disappear forever. Before anyone could escape, a huge section of the ceiling collapsed directly above Lyra. Orlan immediately pushed her out of the way, but he wasn't fast enough to save himself. The falling stone trapped him beneath the rubble as the chamber continued crumbling around them. Lyra screamed his name and rushed toward him, but another violent earthquake separated them with a wall of shattered rock. Through the dust and chaos, Orlan looked at her one last time and shouted for her to leave while she still could. With tears streaming down her face, Lyra realized she was facing the most painful decision of her life. Save the heart of the forest and the future of every kingdom, or stay behind with the man she had come to love, even if it meant losing everything. Lyra stood frozen as dust and broken stone filled the air. Every instinct told her to run toward Orlan, yet Elder Thalian's desperate voice echoed through the collapsing sanctuary. "Princess, if the heart of the forest is abandoned now, its power will be lost forever." She looked at the glowing crystal, whose light was fading with every passing second, and then back at the shattered wall separating her from Orlan. Her heart felt as though it were being torn in two. The man who had stood beside her through every hardship was trapped beneath the ruins, while the future of countless innocent lives depended on the heart of the forest. Never before had destiny demanded such a painful choice. Prince Orlan struggled beneath the fallen stones, his body bruised but his spirit unbroken. Through the narrow gap in the rubble, he could see Lyra hesitating. Even from a distance, he understood exactly what she was thinking. Gathering every ounce of strength he had left, he called out to her. "Lyra, listen to me. A true ruler always protects her people first. Don't choose me. Choose the world." His voice was weak, but every word reached her heart. Tears streamed down Lyra's face as she remembered the frightened girl who had once believed she belonged nowhere. That girl was gone. In her place stood the rightful princess of the Wood Elves, entrusted with a responsibility greater than herself. Taking a deep breath, Lyra placed both hands upon the heart of the forest. Closing her eyes, she poured every bit of her magic, courage, and hope into the ancient crystal. The heart responded immediately. Brilliant emerald light exploded throughout the sanctuary, spreading through every root, every tree, and every living creature connected to the forest. Outside, across mountains, rivers, and distant valleys, dying plants suddenly bloomed again. Corrupted lands began healing, poisoned rivers turned clear, and magical creatures hidden throughout the continent lifted their heads as if awakening from a long nightmare. Nature itself had accepted Lyra as its true guardian. As the heart released its final wave of energy, the collapsing sanctuary changed. Instead of being destroyed completely, the ancient palace dissolved into millions of glowing green leaves that floated peacefully into the sky. The sacred buildings disappeared, but the magic within them returned to the forests where it had always belonged. Elder the Lion smiled proudly. The hidden sanctuary had never been meant to survive forever. It had existed only to protect the heart until the rightful heir returned. Its final sacrifice ensured that the heart's power could never again be imprisoned within walls of stone. Meanwhile, Orlan remained trapped beneath the rubble. The earthquake had stopped, but the heavy stones refused to move. Captain Rowan and the surviving knights desperately tried lifting them, yet nothing seemed strong enough. Watching from nearby, Cale silently stepped forward. He had spent centuries trying to control fate through fear, and those choices had cost countless innocent lives. Now, standing before the prince and the princess he had once failed to protect, he realized there was only one way to make amends. Ignoring everyone's protests, Cale placed both hands upon the shattered stones. The dark mark on his palm began glowing violently as he transferred every remaining fragment of his own life force into the ruins. Ancient shadow magic, once used to destroy, now became a force of protection. The enormous stones slowly rose into the air, allowing the knights to pull Orlan free. However, as the final rock was lifted, Cale collapsed to his knees. His centuries-long life had depended upon the forbidden magic he carried. By sacrificing that power, he had accepted his own end. Lyra rushed toward him. Although Kale had caused unimaginable suffering, she could not ignore the man who had once devoted his life to protecting her family. Kneeling beside him, she gently took his hand. Kale smiled faintly, looking at her as though he could finally see Queen Illyria once again. "I spent centuries believing fear could save the world," he whispered. "You proved that hope is stronger." With those final words, the black mark on his hand disappeared forever. His body dissolved into tiny particles of emerald light that drifted into the forest, becoming one with the land he had failed to protect so long ago. The surviving members of the Shadow Court witnessed their leader's sacrifice in stunned silence. Without Kale's hatred to guide them, many dropped their weapons. Some knelt before Lyra, asking for forgiveness, while others quietly left, determined to spend the rest of their lives repairing the damage they had helped create. Lyra did not seek revenge. Instead, she declared that anyone willing to abandon darkness and protect life would be given the chance to begin again. Her mercy surprised everyone, but it also marked the beginning of a new era. Several weeks later, peace slowly returned to the continent. The forests flourished like never before, and the corruption that had spread for generations vanished almost completely. The truth about the fall of the Wood Elf Kingdom was finally revealed to every nation. Rather than hiding history, King Aldrin ordered ancient records to be restored so future generations would remember how greed and betrayal had nearly destroyed the world. The Star Kingdom and the scattered Wood Elf clans signed a new alliance, promising that neither kingdom would ever again stand alone in times of danger. One quiet evening, Orlon invited Lyra to the highest balcony of the royal palace, where they could see both the shining capital and the endless emerald forest stretching toward the horizon. The wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, and thousands of glowing stars filled the night sky. Orlon gently took Lyra's hand, smiling in the same warm way he had the day they first truly trusted each other. He admitted that when he had met her in the sacred moon forest, he believed destiny had simply chosen his future queen. He now realized destiny had given him something far greater, a partner who had changed not only his life but the fate of the entire world. Lyra smiled through happy tears. She confessed that she had once feared she would always be judged because she was only a half-elf. Instead, she had discovered that courage, kindness, and compassion mattered far more than bloodlines. At that very moment, a soft golden light surrounded them. The magical bond between them glowed once again, but this time it carried a new surprise. Elder the Lion, who had quietly approached from behind, laughed warmly as ancient nature magic revealed what neither of them had yet understood. "The children are growing strong," he said with a knowing smile. Lyra's cheeks turned bright red as she instinctively placed a hand over her stomach. The triplets she carried had absorbed traces of both star magic and the heart of the forest during the final battle. Elder the Lion explained that the children would symbolize the unity of two ancient kingdoms and the hope of a peaceful future. As joy filled the palace, none of them noticed a tiny fragment of black crystal resting deep beneath the ruins of the old sanctuary. Hidden far below the earth, it pulsed once, then fell silent again, leaving behind one final mystery that no one had yet discovered. Months passed, and for the first time in countless generations, the continent enjoyed an era of true peace. The scars left by war slowly disappeared as forests flourished with new life and rivers sparkled with pure magical energy once again. Villages that had been abandoned were rebuilt, trade between kingdoms resumed, and the fear that had haunted both humans and elves gradually faded into memory. The Star Kingdom no longer stood alone, while the scattered Wood Elf clans returned from distant lands to reunite with one another. They no longer searched for a forgotten princess because she had finally come home. Lyra, once treated as an outcast because of her mixed blood, had become the symbol of unity between kingdoms that had been divided for centuries. Despite her royal title, Lyra refused to change the simple kindness that had always defined her. She spent her mornings visiting injured soldiers recovering from the war, helping heal magical creatures rescued from corrupted forests, and planting young trees across lands that had suffered under the Shadow Court's influence. Citizens often saw their princess kneeling in the dirt beside ordinary farmers, laughing with children, or quietly listening to the worries of people who believed no royal would ever care about them. It did not take long for the people to realize that Lyra ruled with compassion instead of pride. Stories about the half-elf princess who healed both the land and its people spread far beyond the borders of the kingdom. Prince Orlan stood proudly beside her every step of the way. Their contract marriage, which had begun as a political necessity, had long since become something much deeper. They had survived prejudice, betrayal, ancient secrets, and a war that nearly destroyed the world. Those hardships forged a bond that neither fate nor magic alone could create. One evening beneath a sky filled with shimmering stars, Orlan led Lyra back to the sacred moon forest where they had first met. The clearing, once scarred by the unstable ritual, had transformed into a breathtaking garden covered with glowing flowers. There, with only the stars, the ancient trees, and their closest friends as witnesses, Orlan knelt before Lyra. He gently held her hands and smiled with the same warmth that had first earned her trust. "When I met you," he said softly, "I believed destiny had chosen my future. Now I know destiny simply introduced me to the woman I would choose every single day." Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she nodded before he could even finish speaking. Their friends cheered as Orlan placed a beautifully crafted ring, woven from silver and living emerald vines, upon her finger. Although they were already bound by law, this ceremony represented something far more meaningful. It was a promise made not because of prophecy or royal duty, but because of genuine love. As the seasons changed, Lyra's pregnancy became the greatest source of joy throughout both kingdoms. The entire royal palace prepared for the arrival of the triplets. Elder the Lion personally oversaw ancient blessing ceremonies, believing the children would inherit gifts from both the Star Elves and the Wood Elves. Queen Eleonora lovingly cared for Lyra like her own daughter, while King Aldrin often joked that he could not wait to spoil his future grandchildren. Even Captain Rowan, known for his serious personality, secretly carved small wooden toys for the babies during his free time. The palace that had once been filled with political arguments and suspicion now echoed with laughter, hope, and excitement. One peaceful spring morning, the long-awaited day finally arrived. Surrounded by skilled healers, royal mages, and her family, Lyra gave birth to 3 healthy babies. The first child, a daughter, opened her tiny eyes to reveal bright emerald irises that glowed softly like the heart of the forest. The second, a son, carried silver hair identical to Orlan's and released tiny sparks of celestial light whenever he laughed. The youngest child, another son, possessed both gifts equally, his gentle magic causing flowers to bloom around his cradle. Elder the Lion smiled with quiet satisfaction. The ancient prophecy had not simply predicted the union of 2 people. It had foretold the birth of a new generation capable of keeping nature and the stars in perfect harmony.